Denny Hamlin was watching the Talladega race from inside the pack. Cars running at half throttle were keeping up with cars running wide open. Nobody could pass. Nobody could pull away. Hamlin had seen enough. So he picked up his phone, texted the CEO of NASCAR directly, and made one simple request. What happened next could change Superspeedway racing forever. And that is exactly why NASCAR is now sitting in meetings talking seriously about cutting the spoiler on Cup Series cars at superspeedways. This is not a rumor. This is not a driver complaining into the air. This is a real conversation with real people, real numbers, and a real deadline. So let's break down what Hamlin actually said, what NASCAR actually confirmed, and why this is either the fix the sport has needed for years or the most dangerous idea anyone has put on the table. Here is what happened at Talladega on Sunday. The race was a 2x2 parade, cars locked into pairs and just sat there. No big moves, no drama at the end, no driver pulling away from the pack and making something happen, just fuel management, track position, and waiting for chaos to find someone else first. Hamlin put it in plain terms on his Actions Detrimental podcast. He said his team was running wide open while other cars were running at 20% throttle and still keeping pace. Think about that. You are pushing your engine to its limit and the guy next to you is barely pressing the pedal, and he is right there with you. That is not racing. That is a traffic jam with a timer on it. The reason this happens comes down to one word: drag. The next-gen car has hundreds more counts of drag than the old Gen 6 car. Hundreds! And here is the part that matters. That extra drag does not just slow the cars down, it makes the whole pack move as one unit. When every car carries that much drag, pulling out of line is suicide. You lose momentum the second you move. So nobody moves. Everyone sits, saves fuel, and waits. The result is what you watched at Talladega, a race decided by who avoided mistakes instead of who made the best move. So Hamlin went on his podcast and made a direct plea to NASCAR. He said, cut the spoiler off this car. Do whatever it takes. Run 210 miles per hour if you have to. Just get some drag out of this car. He also made a point that people need to hear. He said if drivers actually had a chance to pull out of line, they would stop caring about fuel. Right now, fuel saving makes sense because it is the only strategy that works. You cannot pass. You cannot make a run from 17th to 1st. So you save fuel and hope the strategy falls your way. But if drivers knew a shorter spoiler meant they could actually break away from the pack and make a real move, the fuel conversation goes away on its own. Hamlin also brought up a name, Dale Earnhardt. He talked about how Earnhardt could go from 17th to 1st in 8 laps. That would never happen with the current car. Not even close. The drag built into the body of the next-gen car makes that kind of run physically impossible. He also pointed out something small but worth noting. Even removing the Lexan from the spoiler could make a small difference. It would not solve everything, but it would be a start. And then Hamlin did something most drivers do not do. He texted the CEO. After the podcast went out, Hamlin sent a text directly to NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell. He was not just venting on a microphone, he was pushing for action. O'Donnell took that text and sent it straight to John Probst, NASCAR's Executive Vice President and Chief Racing Development Officer. The idea went from podcast to the CEO to the top technical guy at NASCAR in a matter of hours. NASCAR Vice President of Race Communications Mike Ford confirmed all of this on the Hauler Talk podcast. He said Hamlin wants to be part of the actual call with the working group. Hamlin is not just making noise from the outside. He is asking to be in the room. Ford also said Hamlin wants changes in place by the Daytona race at the end of August. So now you are probably wondering, what exactly would change and what are the real risks? Stay right there, because this is where it gets serious. A 3-inch spoiler cut would remove roughly 100 counts of drag from the car. That sounds like a technical detail, but here is what it means in the real world. The car gets faster, a lot faster. We are talking speeds climbing into the 210 miles per hour range, and that number is exactly why NASCAR is nervous. Ford said it directly. He said there is a reason restrictor plates existed on these cars in the first place. That reason is safety. When speeds go above a certain point, the cars become unstable. They become more likely to lift off the ground. And a car going 210 miles per hour that lifts off is not just a crash. It is a catastrophe. Drivers have already been raising concerns about how unstable the current car feels when it gets pushed from behind in the draft. Now imagine that same instability at higher speeds with less downforce holding the car to the track. That is the trade. More exciting racing in exchange for a real safety question that nobody has a clean answer to. Yet, here is the part that almost nobody is talking about. Even if NASCAR agrees that a spoiler cut is the right move, actually testing it before Daytona in August is a massive challenge. Ford explained why. To properly test the Superspeedway package, you need at least 15 cars on track at the same time. You cannot just send 3 cars out and call it a day. The whole point of Superspeedway racing is the pack. You need a real pack to know how the cars behave with the new setup. 15 cars, all coordinated, all on the same day, during a season that barely has any open testing windows. NASCAR has been very careful about making mid-season changes to the car without testing first. Ford said that clearly. The feeling across the garage is that you do not change the car without knowing what you are getting. And right now they do not fully know what they are getting with a 3-inch spoiler cut at 210 miles per hour. So there is a window, a real but narrow window, and Hamlin wants to climb through it before August. Remember at the start we talked about Hamlin watching cars at half throttle, keeping up with cars running wide open? That is not just frustrating. That is a symptom of a car that was built wrong for this type of racing, and the people who built it are now the ones being asked to fix it mid-season. That is a hard position to be in, and it explains why the working group of teams from Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota is now meeting with NASCAR to talk through this together. The meeting is happening. The call is being set up. Hamlin will be on it. Ford said the plan is to look at the Superspeedway package, weigh the risks, and figure out if anything can happen before Daytona at the end of August. He also said plainly, "You are rolling the dice with this." That is not a quote from a critic. That is the NASCAR Vice President of Race Communications using the words "rolling the dice" on a podcast. The best case? They find a spoiler cut that removes enough drag to spread the pack, allows drivers to make real moves, and does not push speeds so high that safety becomes the story. The worst case? They rush a change. Speeds spike to levels nobody is comfortable with. The draft becomes unpredictable, and something bad happens on a track where crashes already happen fast and hard. There is also a third option. Nothing changes for now. NASCAR waits, runs the Daytona test in January 2027 as originally planned, and Superspeedway fans sit through another year of fuel saving and 2x2 parades. So where does that leave us? NASCAR is considering Denny Hamlin's shorter spoiler idea. That part is confirmed, but considering and doing are two very different things. The safety question is real, the testing window is tight, and the pressure to get it right is enormous. Because if they rush this and something goes wrong, the conversation will not be about spoilers anymore.